I've had a recent request from a subscriber to do an upload on how somebody can improve their throttle and clutch timing. I was trying to think of the simplest way to explain this. So, the easiest way that I can explain it is to move off, it's revs before clutch. When you're changing gear, nice and simple, it's throttle off, clutch in, gear up with your foot. Then you're introducing the clutch first, and as it comes through the end of the bite point, you're transferring it over to the throttle where you're gaining your speed with the engine fully engaged. So the easiest way to think about it is if you're changing gear, it's clutch, then throttle. Okay, so gear changing, whether that's up or down, it's going to be throttle off, clutch in, gear down or up with your foot, clutch, then throttle. Throttle off, clutch in, gear up, clutch, revs, and there we go, we're in seconds. Throttle off, clutch in, gear up, clutch, revs. Throttle off, clutch in, gear up, clutch, revs. Changing gear, throttle off, clutch in, gear up, clutch, throttle. Slowed that one down a little bit just to show you. Obviously I lost a little bit of speed in the gear change because the gear change was quite slow. So we're accelerating, throttle off, clutch in, gear up, clutch comes through, over to the throttle. Mirrors for the change of speed limit. Obviously you can't see what I'm doing with my feet, but when I say gear up, I'm tucking my foot nice and tight underneath the gear lever and giving it a good solid nudge up into the next gear. It can help if you preload the gear lever for changing gear to make it smoother, which is whilst you're opening your throttle in the gear below. So in fourth at the moment, if I open the throttle and nudge against the gear lever, it won't change gear, but it will make it smoother when the gear lever is ready to move. So if I nudge against it quite hard with my foot, now throttle off, clutch in, gear up, it just slides in really easily, clutch, throttle. And Ross on Roadcraft Nottingham's done a good upload about gear changing and how to preload, so do head over to his channel and have a good look. But it's literally just pressure against the gear lever from underneath when you're changing up a gear. Don't do it on downshifts. So changing down the gears, I'm losing speed, so throttle's off, clutch in, down the gear with my foot, clutch, throttle. Same again, let's lose a little bit of speed, so back down to the next gear's speed, throttle off, clutch in, down with my foot, clutch, then throttle. If you open the throttle too early during the process of changing gears, then you'll find that you're not gaining speed whilst you're opening the throttle, and it'll make that funny noise. Because remember, until the clutch is fully out, the engine isn't fully engaged. So the more you rev, holding it part way through the bite point, it won't get any faster, it'll just be noisy. Once the clutch is through, then if you increase the throttle, then you'll gain your speed. Coming down the gears, throttle off, a little bit of brakes to bring the speed down, clutch in, gear down, clutch, throttle, just brakes now. Actually, clutch is going to come in. Sometimes when people are having trouble with their throttle and clutch timings for gear changes, it's to do with where the bite point is in the clutch. They might be opening the throttle too early, getting a noise where your throttle comes before the clutch has actually engaged the engine. Try and do a couple of gear changes like that just to show you, just in case that's going to help you to identify what it is you're doing. So I'm going to accelerate, throttle off, clutch in, throttle too early. Ooh. You probably can't hear it so well because of the wind noise. But if you open your throttle too early, before the clutch has engaged the engine, the revs raise up too soon and you get that ooh noise. If you leave it too late to introduce your throttle and you're losing speed, then you might get the ka-chug, ka-chug, ka-chug feeling when you do get back on your throttle, because you're no longer at the appropriate speed for the gear that you've just changed up into. It might also be, if you're finding that it's not particularly smooth, that you're rushing your gear changes. If you're rushing it and you can't time the throttle with the clutch, it's usually because you're whacking the clutch out too quickly and not allowing yourself time to feel the clutch biting and settling in the new gear. Some people rush the gear change by whacking the clutch out. Now, I don't really want to demonstrate this because it's not much fun to demonstrate it. Let's give it a go. Yeah, these bikes are so forgiving that you can do it quite nicely without it biting your backside, but some bikes, you whack that clutch out, the bike's going to lunge away from you, and we don't really want that. If you're moving off, it's throttle, then clutch, then throttle once you've used the clutch through. So when we're moving off, we need some revs. The revs allow the bike to move off without stalling. If you give it too many revs, then you're not very smooth with your clutch. You're running the risk of the bike running away from you. So we're going to give it enough to move off, but keeping the clutch control nice and smooth. So as soon as the lights change, we're going to raise the revs up, find the very beginning of the bite point, hold the revs and ease the clutch through, and then transfer to throttle. So revs on the bite, I'm going to use the bite point for the turn. I changed to second halfway through, which wasn't particularly helpful. Moving off, revs, bite point, hold it on the bite point, get your balance, ease the clutch through and then open the throttle. So if we're moving off and turning tightly, we need to use the throttle and the clutch to keep balance and control the line. So revs, beginning of the bite point, look up to where I want to go, holding it on the bite point. As it comes through, as the clutch comes through, we're then going to transfer over to the throttle. Okay? What we're not doing is giving it loads of clutch immediately, otherwise we'll run wide. So let's try that again. So again, for moving off, revs first. Beginning of the bite point, millimetres more to get your balance. Look up the road. If it runs wide, you pull the clutch back in again. If you want to turn again, clutch came in, then we're introducing as we're coming round. The tighter we want to turn, the less clutch it needs, but you need enough clutch to keep the bike upright. So if you don't give it enough, the bike will drop. Revs, clutch, balance, look at where you want to go, Revs, clutch, balance, millimetres with your clutch just to get that balance, clutch in for tightening up the turn again. So we're just holding it on the bike point, holding the rev steady. If you turn a little bit tighter, it might need a little bit more on the clutch just to keep the bike upright. Going downhill at the moment, just taking the clutch away because I didn't want to gain too much speed. Just holding it nice and steady. Revs, clutch, because it's uphill and I'm turning tightly. Lovely. And just like anything else, smooth gear changes with good timing is a matter of practice. And it also varies from bike to bike. So if you're swapping from one bike to another bike, you might find you need to practice on each of the bikes because it's going to feel different. The bike point will be in a different place, the throttle might react differently. So take yourself out, practice and experiment. Experiment with a slower clutch through the bike point. Experiment with when you're coming back onto the throttle when you're changing gear. Is it halfway through the clutch? Is it at the end of the clutch? Is it much too early in the clutch and you're getting that woo feeling and sound? Well, let me know if this has been useful by popping a little comment in the comments box. It's always useful if you can like, subscribe and share. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye. 3 hours later, this learner might actually move off.